Allahu, 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 Allah, Allahu, 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 Allah.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wa ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wahdahu la sharika lah wa anna Muhammadan abduhu wa rasuluh. Sallallaahu alayhi wa ala alihi wa ashabihi ajma'in. Amma ba'd. So we continue with the Seerah of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, whereas we finished the 6th year and now we start the 7th year of the Hijrah after the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam has migrated from Makkah to Medina. And the last great events to happen was the Sulh of Hudaybiyah, when the Muslims wanted to go to Makkah, back to Makkah for the first time to do Umrah, but they were stopped by the Quraysh of Makkah, who were still worshipping idols, who were still the arch enemy of the Muslims. And they wrote that treaty. They came to an agreement and they wrote a treaty. And that treaty, if you looked at it, if you studied, us being worse than the Sahaba, you will find that apparently it's not good for the Muslims. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He called it a fath, He called it a conquest, because it was one of the greatest events to happen in Islam. Because with that treaty, the Muslims' position was now one of authority. They were now recognized as one of the powers in Arabia, whereas before, nobody considered them. So the Treaty of Hudaybiyah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala called it Fath. And that is why Surah Al-Fath was revealed. Now, after that came right after the Battle of Khaybar, the Battle of Al-Ahzab, when the Ahzab, the groups, different groups, the Quraysh of Makkah, the Bedouin Arabs, Banu Qurayza, the Jews in Medina who had a treaty with the Prophet ﷺ, they all ganged up against the Muslims. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave His Prophet ﷺ and the Muslims victory. And then the Sulh al-Hudaybiyah happened. These were all victories for the Muslims. Now right after that, and one of the implications of that is that the Prophet ﷺ was now safe from the disbelieving Arabs in general. Now he could focus on giving da'wah to other people. So that is why in the beginning of the 7th year now, he ﷺ started writing letters to the kings of the lands of that time, to the superpowers of that time. And those of you who know, who have been attending with us the Seerah, or we have studied the Seerah, I'm saying again, up until this time, the Muslims in Medina, they were not a power to be considered in the world. It was just a very small, in today's time, very small country with not a lot. But now they had become recognized. So the Prophet ﷺ, he wanted to invite other people to Islam because this was the duty Allah gave him. And this is one of the things which makes him special from the other prophets. Every other prophet who was sent to his people alone. As for Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, he was sent to every nation of every humankind. So now he had finished with his people and the people of Medina and the Jews of Medina and some of the Christians. Now he was going to send the message outside. So before he started writing letters, his companions, they told him, Ya Rasulullah, those kings, they do not receive official diplomatic messages without there being a seal or a stamp, if you want to call it that. They won't recognize it. They won't give it value. So the Prophet ﷺ, he had a khatam, ايش يقول khatam بالإنجليزي? Ring. He had a ring made for him, which said Muhammadun Rasulullah from bottom up. So it says Muhammad, Rasul, Allah. So if you looked at it, it says Allah, Rasul, Muhammad. Okay? Meaning this is a message. If he sealed that message, it's a message from Muhammad, the messenger of Allah. So they'll take that ring, that is the seal. Either they'll have an actual seal, or they have a ring which only he could have. So he seals every message. Basically, today you can see a hologram for authentication. Okay? He had that ring made of silver, and he used to wear it. And that ring, by the way, stayed with him until he died, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Then he stayed with Abu Bakr, then he stayed with Umar, and then he stayed with Uthman radiallahu anhu for 6 years. Until once he was sitting by the well of Aris, and he was playing with the ring which was on his finger, and it fell. And they went looking for it for 3 days, they could not find it. And it has never been found, by the way. Don't go to some fake museum and they say this is the ring. No, it's not there. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala didn't want it to be found. They tried their best for 3 days, they could not find it. So the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam made for him the ring which says Allah, Rasul, Muhammad. And he started writing letters to the other kings and the other leaders of the area. Now, what does this tell you first? It tells you that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he understood that part of da'wah comes with diplomacy. If it means they won't accept my message until I have a seal of my own as a leader, then okay. That is fine, we'll make a seal. The goal is for the message to reach. Making this seal and sealing those letters does not go against anything in Islam. This is something very important you have to understand. There's things which we do limaslahati da'wah. There's some people today, they understand Islam very wrongly. They'll tell you, using a microphone is bid'ah. Why is it bid'ah, habibi? Because the Prophet ﷺ never prayed with microphone. And salah is ibadah, and ibadah is tawqifiyah. But that's not how we understand Islam. Nobody said a microphone in arkanus salah is one of the pillars of salah. But we use it, why? Because we have huge masjids now, and those who pray behind, they'll never hear the imam. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that. So the Prophet ﷺ, he had a seal made for him. Some of the letters he wrote, we want to mention them very briefly. The first one, he wrote to An-Najashi. And An-Najashi, you mention him first because he was a friendly leader. Friendly meaning he was a Muslim already. An-Najashi was a Muslim, as we know. He had become Muslim, but this time the Prophet ﷺ, he wrote to him this letter asking him to bring back Muhajiru Habasha, those who had gone to Habasha. The Muslims who had migrated to Abyssinia, the Prophet ﷺ told him, now send them back. Now they can come back home. And there were around 40 people, men and women. There were around 40 people. Within them was Ja'far ibn Abi Talib radiallahu anhu, and his wife Asma bint Umays, and others, Habiba, Ramla bint Abi Sufian, and others. So this is one of the letters he sent. And this is when An-Najashi, he married Habiba. Habiba, she's the daughter of Abu Sufian. Abu Sufian, at this time, he's the leader of the enemies of the Muslims in Makkah. But his daughter, Habiba, had migrated because she was a Muslim with her husband, Abdullah ibn Jahsh radiallahu anhu. They had gone to Abyssinia already. And Abdullah ibn Jahsh radiallahu anhu, he died in Abyssinia. Now most of the books of Seerah, they'll tell you, irtadda, he left Islam and then he died there. That is not correct. He did not leave Islam, he died as a Muslim, as a Sahabi radiallahu anhu. So after Habiba was now a widow for a while, in this letter, the Prophet ﷺ asked Najashi to marry him, ﷺ, to Habiba. Because Najashi is her wali. The one who has no wali. If your wali as a sister, you're a revert as we call it today, and your father's not a Muslim, then your wali is either a closest family member who's Muslim or your leader. If it's an Islamic country, it's the Islamic leader or the judges he appoints. If it's non-Islamic society like us, it's your local imam. There's a big problem which happens these days. Some of the sisters who are reverts, they go marrying themselves, right, left, and center. I had this case once when a sister came to me, said, Sheikh, there's problems which happen between me and my husband, all that. Type, sister, you're a revert, yes. Where's your wali? I don't have a wali. What do you mean you don't have a wali? Who got you married? Well, before we got married, I found a brother in one of the masjids. He looked like a good brother, so I said, you'll be my wali. Like that. Do you know him? I don't know him. How can he be a wali? That is not allowed. Ala kulli hal. And Najashi was the wali of Habiba. So he married Habiba to the Prophet ﷺ, who was in Medina. And he gave the mahr on behalf of the Prophet ﷺ, 4,000 silver coins. No other wife of the Prophet ﷺ got that much. Najashi is a king and he's a good Muslim, so he gave that on behalf of the Prophet ﷺ. The next letter, and that is when he sent them back to come to Medina. The next letter which the Prophet ﷺ he wrote was to Herakl. In English they call him Heracles. Now, we use the names as they've come in our books, in the Seerah books, which are Arabicized or Arabized names. Okay? In contemporary terms, you might use other names. Now, they might say Caesar. But we know Caesar was just one person, right? Anyway, Herakl was the king of the Romans, or what they call at that time also the Byzantines. Okay? Now, I spoke here about Herakl a few years ago. We did a very good lecture. But this is the time when this happened. Now, he was the king of one of the greatest empires of the time. In today's term, it's up to you to decide. Is it America and China or America and Russia? It's up to you. Okay, this is the must. You don't talk politics here. We can talk that in the coffee shop after. At that time, it was the Persians and the Romans. Okay? The Persians and the Romans. And these two were always fighting. Herakl was the king of the Romans. The Prophet ﷺ, when he sent these letters, he chose an appropriate messenger also, an appropriate ambassador or diplomat who's fitting for that particular area and that particular king. So for this one, he chose Dihya ibn Khalifa al-Kalbi. And Dihya, as we have mentioned before, he's the Sahabi who was very handsome. And when Jibreel used to come in the form of a human being, he would mostly come in the form of Dihya. So Aisha would say to the Prophet ﷺ, Dihya is here to visit you. Little does she know it's actually Jibreel. It's not Dihya al-Kalbi, radiyallahu anhu. So he sent Dihya to Heracles, the king of the Romans, calling him to Islam. Now, and he was informed to go to Al-Harith ibn Abi Shimr, who was the governor of Busra, which is in Sham today, because he was under Heracles. We know that the Byzantine or the Roman Empire came all the way to what we call today Tabuk, which is today Saudi Arabia. This is all under the Byzantines. This gives you a picture. Modern day Saudi Arabia, part of this is under the Romans. The Muslims only have Medina at this time. Makkah is under the kuffar of Quraysh. So this tells you what was happening then. So he was supposed to give it to Al-Harith ibn Abi Shimr, who was supposed to give it to his king. Tayyib. And this is the same time when Herakl he had taken a vow, another, to walk from Constantinople, okay, which is today we call Istanbul, which was the capital then. The capital of the Roman Empire, Byzantine Empire, was Constantinople. Today it's called Istanbul. If he won against the Persians in the latest war which they fought, he said, I take a vow to God, I will walk from Constantinople to the Holy Land, Jerusalem. So they won. So this was around the time he was committing his vow. So he walked from Constantinople all the way to Quds, Jerusalem. When he reached there, one night he had a dream. And that dream was not very good. The dream basically said, someone from the people who are circumcised will come and take your kingdom. So he woke up and they saw in his face that he was not good. So he asked his astrologers, because they used to believe in astrology, what do you think of this dream? He said, this dream looks like it's true. He says, find for me the people who are circumcised in this land. He returns back, he says, the people who are circumcised in this land, who practice circumcision, are the Jews. This is what the Hadith says, by the way. And don't worry about them. They are nothing. If you want, we can finish all of them right now. This is how the Christians used to treat the Jews, and this is well known. This is exactly what the Hadith says. That astrology guy tells his king, don't worry about them. We can finish them right now. But he says, you know what, look for someone else. Or look for other people. I don't think it's them. Now this is the same time when Dihy al-Kalbi has reached Busra, and that message is about to be brought to Sham, to Jerusalem where the king is. While this is happening, Abu Sufian, the king or the leader of Makkah, the leader of the kuffar of Makkah, he had gone to Sham to do business. As we know, they used to go once to Sham and once to Yemen, the Quraysh, رحلة الشتاء والصيف. So they were in Sham for business. When the people look, they say, you know what? There's Arabs here, and they do that also. They circumcise. So the king says, bring him to me, or bring them to me. Bring them to me. When they were brought, and the message came from Busra, from Al-Harith. This is a letter from someone who claims he's a prophet from the Arabs. And he read that letter. So he said, okay, now bring those Arabs to me. And this is the hadith, the famous hadith of Abu Sufian. Now Abu Sufian, he relates that whatever happened. Now remember, the Arabs, they are nothing, literally nothing, especially the Arabs of Makkah. We have mentioned this a few times. They are nothing in this world at that time. And that is the reason we say that's why they were never colonized. Nobody wanted Makkah. There's nothing in Makkah. It's just rocks. There's nothing. Not today. There's a lot of petroleum. Sorry, my fellow dear Saudis especially. Back in the day, that was the plan of Allah, by the way. Their culture was preserved because they were never colonized. Like I told you, even up to Tabuk, which is today Saudi Arabia, it was all under the Romans. So Abu Sufyan, being the leader of Quraysh, but he knows that I'm going to go speak to the greatest superpower of the time because they have defeated the Persians. He was scared. He was brought in together with 6 of his companions from the Quraysh. And Herakl, he brought a translator because they don't speak Roman or Latin or whatever they spoke then, and they don't speak Arabic. He doesn't speak Arabic. So he brought a translator and said to him, translate whatever I ask him what he says. And say to those who are behind him, if he lies, they should tell me, or others will see what I'll do to them. And Abu Sufyan, he says, Wallahi, if it was not for the fact that my companions, my other friends I came with, they will call me a liar, I would have lied because of how much hate he had against the Prophet ﷺ at the time. But even as a non-Muslim, he knew that having the characteristic of being a liar, it's a shame. He couldn't take that. It's not deen which stopped him, not that he feared Allah. No, he says, I fear that they will call me a liar. Even though he was the leader, imagine. Even though it's against his enemies, the Muslims, which tells you a lot. So Herakli started asking him some questions. He said to his translator, Salhum, ayyuhum aqrabuhum ilayhi nasaban. Who amongst them is the closest in relation to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam? And Abu Sufian, he said, me. Because Abu Sufian and the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, they meet at Abd Manaf. Eventually they come from the same family. So he said to him, come closer. How is the lineage of this person in between you people of Makkah? كيف نسبه فيكم? And Abu Sufyan responded saying, هو ذو نسب. He is someone of a noble lineage. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he is from Banu Hashim. He is from the noble lineage. His great-grandfather was the leader of Makkah. His uncle Abu Talib was the de facto leader of Makkah. So he asked, that's the first question, memorize it by the way. Then he said, فَهَلْ قَالَ هَذَا الْقَوْلُ مِنْكُمْ أَحَدٌ قَدْ قَبْلَهُ? Was there anyone before him who had come about from you, people of Makkah, who said that he's a prophet? Before him? Abu Sufyan, he says, no, never. Nobody has come from us saying he's a prophet. Number 3, Herakli asked, فَهَلْ كَانَ مِنْ آبَائِهِ مَلِكٌ? Was one of his fathers a king? The Arabs never had a king anyways. He said, no, there's no kings. Number 4, he asked, فَأَشْرَافُ النَّاسِ أَتْبَاعُهُ أَمْ ضُعَفَائِهِمْ? The people who follow him, are they the noble people or the weak people, poor people? And Abu Sufyan says they are the poor people who follow him. Number 5, he asked, أَيَزِيدُونَ أَمْ يَنْقُسُونَ? Their numbers increase, the number of his followers, or decrease? He says, بَلْ يَزِيدُونَ, rather they increase. Now remember again, this is the time of what? Sulh al-Hudaybiyah. This is the only time when the Quraysh have recognized the Muslims. And now it's a time of peace. And then he said, number 6, فَهَلْ يَرْتَدُّ مِنْهُمْ أَحَدٌ سَخْطَةٌ عَنْ دِينِهِ? Does any of those followers apostatize, leave the religion because he hates it after he has believed? Abu Sufyan, he says no. Question number 7, فَهَلْ كُنْتُمْ تَتَّهِمُونَهُ بِالْكَذِبِ قَبْلَ أَنْ يَقُولَ مَا قَالَ? Did you ever accuse this man to be someone who's a liar before he came to say he's a prophet? He said no. Number 7 or number 8, فَهَلْ يَغْذِرُ? Is he someone who's known to be treacherous? He doesn't keep his promises. Abu Sufyan, he says, I said no. And this is what he says. He says, this is the time I thought I could enter some words, so I speak bad about Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He said, I said no. But right now we're in a treaty of peace. We're in a treaty of peace, Sulh al-Hudaybiyah, and we don't know what he's going to do. Maybe he'll keep his promise or maybe not. That is what he said. Tayyib. Then he asked Herakl, number 9, فَهَلْ قَاتَلْتُمُوهُ? Have you fought with him? Abu Sufyan, he says, yes, we fought. And he said, Herakl, and how was that? Abu Sufyan, he says, الْحَرْبُ بَيْنَنَا وَبَيْنَهُ سِجَالٌ يَنَالُ مِنَّ وَنَنَالُ مِنْهُ. He says, the war between us is two-sided. We hit them with calamities and they hit us with calamities. Which is not very true, it's not very accurate. But maybe they considered Uhud as a victory. And then Herakli asked the most important question. He says, فَمَا يَأْمُرُكُمْ? What is his message? And Abu Sufyan, he said, يَأْمُرُنَا أَن نَعْبُدَ اللَّهَ وَحْدَهُ وَلَا نُشْرِكَ بِهِ شَيْئًا. He tells us to worship Allah alone and not commit any shirk, not to have any partners for Allah. وَيَنْهَانَ عَمَّا كَانَ يَعْبُدُ آبَاؤُنَا. And He stops us from what our forefathers used to worship. وَيَأْمُرُنَا بِالصَّلَاةِ وَالصِّدْقِ وَالْعَفَافِ وَالصِّلَةِ. And He commands us to pray and to give. Okay? And to be truthful and to be chaste. Al-afaf, the opposite of committing zina. And sila, to keep good relations with our relatives. Upon this now, Herakl, he started to explain himself. فَقَالَ لِتُرْجُمَانِ. He said to the translator, قُلْ لَهُ, say to him, I asked you about his lineage. سَأَلْتُكَ عَنْ نَسَبِهِ. And you mentioned that he is someone with noble lineage. فَذَكَرْتُ أَنَّهُ فِيكُمْ ذُو نَسَبٍ وَكَذَلِكَ الرُّسُلُ تُبْعَثُ فِي نَسَبِ قَوْمِهَا. يَرْحَمْكَ اللَّهُ. He said, I asked you about his lineage, and you mentioned he's from a noble lineage. And like that, all the prophets of Allah, they have been sent from good families. Now, it wasn't my plan to come and explain this. Like I said, we did this a few years ago here in this masjid. But I will do it anyway. The point of this, why does Allah send every prophet from a noble or respectable family? Is because we humans, this is our nature. If someone came from a lowly family, most of us don't believe. Most of us don't respect him. It's just our nature. So Allah chose every prophet, not from the highest family, but from a noble, respectable family. Every prophet Allah sent. And remember, Heraclius, he is a king of the Christians. Yarhamkallah. He is the king of the Christians. Next, he said, I asked you, did anyone before him from your people come and claim prophethood? And you said no. So I said, you know what? If this is the case, if it was yes, I would have said, okay, he's not a prophet, he's just following whoever came before him, right? So and so did this, so he's doing it. Third, I asked you, هل كان من آبائه ملك? Was any of his fathers a king? And you said no. So I said to myself, maybe if his forefathers were kings, he just came back to take his father's kingdom. But there's no kingdom to take. Next, I asked you, did you ever accuse him of being someone who lies? And you said no. So I said to myself, it is not for a human being not to be a liar to other human beings and then to come and lie against Allah. If he's not a liar in between human relationships, how can he come and lie and say, I'm sent from God? Look at these wise questions. Next question I asked you, are the noble people his followers or the weak, poor people? And you said it's mostly the poor people. وَكَذَلِكَ أَتْبَاعُ الرُّسُلِ. And all the prophets were like that. Most of the followers were the poor, weak people, not the noble people. Why? Because the noble people, they have kibr. And we saw this already in Makkah. When Abu Jahl, Abu Lahab, Umayyah ibn Abi Khalaf, they said to the Prophet ﷺ what? When they passed by and he's sitting with Bilal and Ammar bin Yasir and Suhaib and Abdurrahman bin Auf, he said, Ya Muhammad, you want us to sit with these ones? They used to be our slaves yesterday. Chase them away and then maybe we'll come and listen to you. So he says, yes, like that, most of the followers of all the prophets, they were the poor people. And then I asked you, the followers, do they increase in number or they decrease? And you said they increase. He says, وَكَذَلِكَ أَمْرُ الْإِيمَانِ حَتَّى يَتِمَّ. And like that, true belief is like that. And then I asked you, does anyone apostatize, leave his religion after becoming his follower? And you said no. He says, I say it's because that is the true belief. Once it hits the heart, it does not go out. And then I asked you, is he someone who's treacherous? He breaks his promises. You said no. And like that, prophets are like that. They're never treacherous. And then I asked you, have you fought against him? And you said you have fought against him, and the war was each-sided. And like that, the prophets, Allah tests them. One time they win, and one time there's danger which is afflicted on them. And then I asked you, what does he command you with? And you said he commands you to worship Allah alone and not associate any partners with him. And he stops you from worshipping idols and to pray and to be truthful and all that. So if what you say is the truth, then that man is going to own where my 2 feet are today, meaning he's going to take my throne. Then that man is going to take my throne. And I had known that he's going to come out, but I never thought he'd come out from you. The Arabs of Makkah, like I told you, they were not in the equation as we say today in today's language. Nobody considered them. Every prophet came and said, there's the greatest, the chosen prophet who's going to come at the end of times. He's the special one. And the Jews were expecting him, the Christians were expecting him. But nobody thought that would ever come from the Quraysh of Makkah. That's why the Jews refused to believe. يَعْرِفُونَهُ كَمَا يَعْرِفُونَ أَبْنَاءَهُم. They used to know him, his signs, he's the one. But they said, no, how? He has to come from us, not these lowly Arabs. That's what they said. And he says also, Heraclius, I never thought it would come from you. So if I can find a way to him, I would have crawled to him and have washed his feet. And indeed, his kingdom is going to reach where I am today. That is when he called for that message which the Prophet ﷺ had written. And it was read and it said, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Min Muhammadin Abdillahi wa Rasulihi. And this is from Muhammad, the messenger of Allah. The servant and the messenger of Allah. Ila Herakla Azim al-Rum. It's a message to Heraclius, the leader of the Romans. Salamun ala man ittaba al-huda. Peace be upon those who follow guidance. Amma ba'd, as for what follows, فَإِنِّي أَدْعُوكَ بِدِعَايَةِ الْإِسْلَامِ. I call you to the call of peace or submission, Islam. Aslim taslam. Become a Muslim, submit, and you will attain peace. يُؤْتِيكَ اللَّهُ أَجْرَكَ مَرَّتَيْنِ. Allah will give you a reward in double fold. فَإِن تَوَلَّيْتَ. But if you refuse, فَإِنَّ عَلَيْكَ إِثْمُ الْأَرِيسِيِّينَ. Then you will carry the blame of all your followers. All your followers. And then the Prophet ﷺ, he wrote the verse, قُلْ يَا أَهْلَ الْكِتَابِ تَعَالَوْا إِلَى كَلِمَةٍ سَوَاءٍ بَيْنَنَا وَبَيْنَكُمْ أَلَّا نَعْبُدَ إِلَّا اللَّهَ وَلَا نُشْرِكَ بِهِ شَيْئًا وَلَا يَتَّخِذَ بَعْضُنَا بَعْضًا أَرْبَابًا مِّن دُونِ اللَّهِ فَإِن تَوَلَّوْا فَقُولُوا اشْهَدُوا بِأَنَّ مُسْلِمُونَ. In Surah Al Imran 64. Say, O people of the book, come to a common word between us and you, that we do not worship none except Allah, and that we do not set up partners for Him, and we do not take us human beings as gods. And if you turn away, then you should bear witness that we are Muslims. When he heard this message, he shook. He was shaken with fear. Abu Sufian says now, and remember Abu Sufian is telling this story after he has become Muslim. He says, when I saw that, when I heard his words, and then when I saw the way he reacted after the message was read, everybody started to scream inside the courtyard of the king. And we were taken out. Remember, they're just nobody Arabs in the courtyard of the king. And those ministers in the Byzantine or the Roman court, they see their king who's affected like this. So these guests were kicked out. This is something major now. Okay? They had to deal with it inside. He says, when we went out, I said to my friends, لَقَدْ أَمِرَ أَمْرُ إِبْنَ أَبِي كَبْشَةٍ. The matter And he used to call the Prophet ﷺ this Ibn Abi Kabsha, because Abu Kabsha was the husband of Halima al-Sa'diyya, the mom of the Prophet ﷺ by suckling. Tayyib, he said his matter has been established. إِنَّهُ يَخَافُهُ Malik bin al-Asfar. The king of the white people, or the Romans, is fearful of him. He says, Abu Sufian at the end of the hadith, فَمَا زِلْتُ مُوقِنًا أَنَّهُ سَيَظْهَرُ حَتَّى أَدْخَلَ اللَّهُ عَلَيَّ الْإِسْلَامِ. From that day, I knew that Islam is going to progress, until the day I actually became Muslim. So when this was happening, the next day also, Heraclius, he left Quds, Jerusalem, to Hims, which is today Syria. And he stayed there. And a letter from one of his governors came also, who he had sent to look and to investigate. And it confirmed about the Prophet ﷺ. So when this happened, Heraclius, he called all of his ministers. And he closed the doors. And he said to them, I'm going to give you an offer which will make you happy in this world and the hereafter. But you need to listen to me carefully. The offer is this. I think, Ya Ma'ashar al-Rum, or Romans, that it is time for us to follow this man because he's a true prophet. When he said this, they started to scream and to run like wild donkeys. But when they went out, they saw the doors were locked. So they came back and it was just pandemonium and chaos. When Heraclius, he saw this, he told them, okay, keep quiet. He knew that they were not people who were going to accept that. So he said, you know what? I was just testing you guys. Even though in his heart he knew that this was the right thing to do. I was just testing you guys. So he honored Dihya al-Kalbi, radiallahu anhu, and he says to him, go back to your prophet and say to him, I'm a Muslim now. And he gave him some gifts. This is in the Sunan or Sahih of Ibn Hibban, hadith which is Sahih. So Dihya al-Kalbi, he went back to the Prophet ﷺ and explained this whole story. And the man says he's a Muslim and these are the gifts. And the Prophet ﷺ, he said, كَذَبَ عَدُوَ اللَّهِ. He's lying, the enemy of Allah. لَيْسَ بِمُسْلِمٍ. He's not a Muslim. He feared for his kingdom. And then the wealth which he sent, the Prophet ﷺ, he divided it. And this was proven as we're going to study by tomorrow, inshallah, or day after, in the Battle of Mu'tah. Tomorrow, we're going to go to the Battle of Mu'tah, which is the first battle the Muslims are fighting the Christians or the Romans now. And these were under the same Heraclius. So he was not a Muslim. So this was the message sent to Heraclius. Another message was sent to the other superpower now, which is Kisra. Okay? Now Kisra was the title, Arabic title given to any king of Persia. To any king of Persia. Now, the Prophet ﷺ, he chose Abdullah ibn Hudhafa Sahmi, radiallahu anhu, to send him to Hormuz, the king of the Persians. Okay? And he sent him through Al-Mundhir ibn Sawa, who was the governor of Bahrain. Bahrain, which we know it today, Bahrain was under the Persians. Okay? So, Abdullah ibn Hudhafa, he went to this message which said, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, min Muhammadin Rasulullah, from Muhammad the Messenger of Allah, ila Kisra Azim Faris, to Kisra, the king of the Persians. Salamun ala man ittaba al-huda, peace be upon those who follow the guidance. Wa amana billahi wa rasul, and those who believe in Allah and His Messenger. Wa shahida an la ilaha illallah wahdahu la sharika lah, and those who bear witness that there is no true God who deserves to be worshipped except Allah. Wa anna Muhammadan abdu wa rasul, and that Muhammad is Messenger and His servant. وَأَدْعُوكَ بِدُعَاءِ اللَّهِ, and I call you by the call of Allah. فَإِنِّي رَسُولُ اللَّهِ لَلنَّاسِ كَافَّةً, because I am the messenger of Allah to everyone, to all humanity. لِأُنذِرَ مَنْ كَانَ حَيًّا, to warn those who are alive. وَيَحِقَّ الْقَوْلُ عَلَى الْكَافِرِينَ, and then the word of truth, the punishment will come on those who disbelieve. فَأَسْلِمْ تَسْلَمْ, if you believe, you become a Muslim, you will attain peace. فَإِنْ أَبَيْتَ, if you refuse, فَإِنَّ إِثْمَ الْمَجُوسِ عَلَيْكَ, the sins of all the Majus, the fire worshippers, your followers, will be on you. Because that is how society works. And mostly during those times, if the king or the leader of the tribe decides something, everybody follows. We saw that in how the people of Medina became Muslims. So, فَلَمَّا قُرِئَ الْكِتَابِ, when this message was read to Kisra, Hormuz, his name, he took it and he tore it into pieces. And he says, يَكْتُبْ إِلَيَّ هَذَا وَهُوَ عَبْدِي, this man, he writes to me like this and he's my slave. That is how they used to look down on Arabs till today. And they want to bring back the kingdom of Persia, by the way. Yes, that is the plan. He tore it to pieces. This man writes to me and he's my slave. When this news reached the Prophet sallallaahu alayhi wasallam, he asked Allah to tore his kingdom just like he tore that message. And then Kisra, he wrote to Badan. Badan was the governor of Yemen. Yemen was under the Persians. We spoke about this. Yemen was under the Persians. Okay? The Abyssinians, the people of Habasha, they used to rule over it, but they were under the Persians. They were under the Persians. So he wrote to this man called Badan, and he said, send 2 strong men to this man in Medina and let them bring him to me. So Badan, he sent this man called Quhrumana and another person. And they had a message. They went to Medina. When they reached there, the Prophet ﷺ, he read the message, he smiled. And he called them to Islam. And then he said, come back tomorrow and I'll tell you what I want. When they came tomorrow, the Prophet ﷺ, he said, go back to your Lord, meaning Badan. Okay, go back to your Lord, because they used to worship them. Go back to your Lord, meaning your king of Yemen, and tell him that my Lord, Allah, has killed his Lord, who's Kisra, in Persia, Hormuz. So by the time they actually reached Yemen, and then news came from Persia that what had happened, Parvez, or Sheraway, that's his name, the son of Hormuz had killed his own father and took over the kingdom. They said, okay, this man has to be a prophet, because there was no way he had this news before us. News came to them that actually, yes, their king has been killed by his own son. By his own son. And that is when Badan, he became Muslim. And those under him, the Persians under him in Yemen, they became Muslim. So that was the message to the Persians. And then there's more to that which will follow after. Another message which the Prophet ﷺ he sent was to Muqawqis. Muqawqis, the king or the leader of Alexandria, as we know it today in Egypt. Okay? Now those are mostly Coptic people, as we know them. They're called Coptic people, Aqbat. And for this mission, the Prophet ﷺ he chose Hatib ibn Abi Balta'a, radiyallahu anhu. Hatib, who soon we are going to mention him again in the Conquest of Makkah. There's a great story about him. Hatib ibn Abi Balta'a. So he sent him to Muqawqis in Alexandria, and his name was Jurayj. They say his name was Jurayj. This message said, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. من محمد عبد الله ورسوله, from Muhammad is the servant of Allah and his messenger, إلى المقوقس عظيم القبط, to Muqawqis, the king or the leader of the Copts. سلام على من اتبع الهدى, peace be upon those who follow the guidance. أما بعد, as for what follows, فإني أدعوك بدعاية الإسلام, I call you by the call of Islam. أسلم تسلم, become Muslim, you'll be safe. وأسلم يؤتيك الله أجرك مرتين, and believe Allah will give you double your reward. فإن توليت, but if you turn away, فإن عليك إثم القبط, you'll carry the sins of all the Copts. And then he wrote to him the same verse in Surah Ali Imran, قُلْ يَا أَهْلَ الْكِتَابِ تَعَالَوْا إِلَى كَلِمَةٍ سَوَاءٍ. Say, O people of the book, come to a common word between us and you, which is what? That we do not worship anyone except Allah, and we don't take human beings as gods. And if you turn away, then you should bear witness that we are Muslims. When he finished it, Muqawqis, he took the letter and he kissed it. And then he honored Hatib as a messenger. And then he called his Batariqa. Batariqa, how do you translate that in English? His bishops. Okay? His bishops. And then he started speaking to Hatib. He says, tell me about your friend. He's a prophet, right? And Hatib says, yes, he's the prophet of Allah. So Muqawqis, he says, okay then, if he's a prophet, so how come when his people chased him out of Makkah, he did not make dua for Allah just to destroy them, if he's a real prophet? If he's a real prophet, how can he get kicked out of his homeland? The greatest land on earth, Makkah. Why didn't he just make dua for Allah to destroy his people? So Hatib said, and this is the point of choosing the right man for the job. He said, أَلَسْتَ تَشْهَدُ أَنَّ عِيسَى بْنَ مَرْيَمَ رَسُولَ اللَّهِ? Don't you bear witness that Isa is a prophet of Allah? He says, yes. Then why, when they wanted to kill him, he didn't just make dua for Allah to destroy all of them? He didn't do that. Allah took him up to the sky. Muqawqis, he says, أنت حكيم جاء من عند حكيم. You're a wise man who came from a wise man. ثم كتب المقوقس كتابا لرسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم. Then he wrote a message to the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم. In this message he says, I have read your message and I've understood what you said and what you called to. And I knew that there was a prophet who had to come. وإني كنت قد علمت أن نبيا باقيا وكنت أظن أنه يخرج بالشام. And I thought he'll come from Sham, Syria, or Palestine. They all never thought, this is the point again, that this prophet will come from the Arabs. Okay? وَقَدْ أَكْرَمْتُ رَسُولَكَ. I have honored your messenger and I have sent with him two of the greatest gifts I can give you. These are two of the best slaves or servant girls in all of our lands. Okay? And I have also given him some clothes or some robes and a mule. And the name of this mule is Duldul. It's one of the famous mules of the Prophet ﷺ. He didn't do more than that. He didn't become Muslim. When Hatib came back to Medina and he read the message to the Prophet ﷺ, the Prophet ﷺ, he said, ظَنَّ أَيْ بَخِلَ الْخَبِيثُ بِمُلْكِهِ وَلَا بَقَاءَ لِمُلْكِهِ. This evil man, he chose and he was stingy because of his kingdom. He refused to accept Islam because of that. And his kingdom is not going to stay. And the Prophet ﷺ accepted the gifts. As for one of those girls, or those women, her name is Maria, who the Prophet ﷺ took her as his own. And they had a child called Ibrahim. That is Maria. As for the other one, the Prophet ﷺ, he gave her, one narration says, he gave her to Hassan ibn Thabit, radiallahu anhu. Taib. The other one says he gave he gave her to Jahm ibn Qais al-Abdari radiallahu anhu. Who, by the way, so Jahm ibn Qais radiallahu anhu was given this other woman. Her name is Sirin. Her name is Sirin. It's a famous name now. Okay. They had a child. That child was Zakaria ibn Jahm. Okay. And this Zakaria ibn Jahm, he became the governor of Egypt under Abdullah ibn Amr. So look how one of their own grandsons was born into Islam and went back there and became a governor of Islam. Taib. And this is when the Prophet ﷺ gave news that Egypt, Masr, is going to become Muslim. And the Prophet ﷺ, he said as in Sahih Muslim, إِنَّكُمْ سَتَفْتَحُونَ مِصْرَ. You're going to conquer one day Misr. وَهِيَ أَرْضٌ يُسَمَّى فِيهَا الْقِيرَاتِ. And it's one of those few lands they use the word qirat, which is a measure of payment. Today qirat in Misr, any Egyptians here? Very strange. Anyway, in Egypt, qirat these days they use it for measure of land. Acres, we use acres, square feet, whatnot, they use qirat. Okay, if I'm not wrong. Now, فَإِذَا فَتَحْتُمُوهَا, when you open, when you conquer it, فَأَحْسِنُوا إِلَىٰ أَهْلِهَا. The Prophet ﷺ says to the Muslims, be good to the people of Egypt. فَإِنَّ لَهُمْ ذِمَّ وَرَحِمًا. وفي رواية سهرة. Because they are going to be under you as أهل ذمة, and they, because they have relationship with us. Because of Maria. Because of Sirin. By the way, it's good they're not here. But the people of Egypt, they love this hadith. They love this hadith. And why should you not love it when the Prophet ﷺ is saying this? Be good to them. Taib. Another hadith, he says, Allah, Allah fi qibti Misra, فَإِنَّكُمْ سَتَظْهَرُونَ عَلَيْكُمْ. Remember Allah about those people, because you're going to be victorious over them. وَيَكُونُونَ لَكُمْ عُدَّةً وَأَعْوَانًا فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ. And those people, one day they're going to be people who support you greatly in the path of Allah. Which is very true. If you look at the history of the Muslims, the tarikh of the Muslims, after the Prophet ﷺ, when actually Egypt was conquered in the time of Umar, from that time until today, some of the greatest warriors and some of the greatest ulama of Islam have come from Misr. And nobody can argue with that. But it's a shame that up until today, many of us, we have not studied the history of Islam. It's just a fact. It's a fact. But hopefully we hope that this is a good start. We start from the Seerah and go on, inshallah. So this is the wasi of the Prophet ﷺ to the people of Misr. And then the Prophet ﷺ, he wrote also to Al-Harith ibn Abi Shimr, like we mentioned him, who was in charge of Busra and also Damascus. Al-Harith ibn Abi Shimr. And the Prophet sent to him Shuja' ibn Wahb al-Asadi radiallahu anhu. Okay? And this Harith, he was from the Ghassasina. They call in English the Ghassanid Empire. Okay? Calling him to Islam. When this man, he read this message from the Prophet ﷺ, he threw it away. And he said, who's going to take my kingdom from me? And he started preparing an army to go invade Medina, to attack Medina. But when Herakl, who was the king of the Romans, whom the Ghassanid Empire was under them, when he heard of this, he stopped him. When he heard of them, he stopped him. When the Prophet ﷺ got this message, he said, okay, his kingdom is done. His kingdom is done. And this is one of the reasons the Battle of Mu'tah is going to happen soon. The Battle of Mu'tah. Also, the Prophet ﷺ, he wrote to Hawdha ibn Ali, who was the king of Yamama. Yamama is today Saudi Arabia also. But back then it was a kingdom by itself. Okay? Hawdha bin Ali. And he sent to him Salit ibn Amr radiallahu anhu, al-Amiri, with a message which says, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, min Muhammadir Rasulillahi ila Hawdhata bin Ali. Salamun ala man ittaba al-huda. Now do you notice there's a difference in wording of the message sent to the king of the Romans, the king of the Persians, and these smaller kings. And again, we learn diplomacy from this. You cannot treat a king who owns half of the world like someone who owns one small village. That is not wisdom. That is not good leadership. And you see that from the writings of the Prophet ﷺ. So, for Kisra and Qaisar, the Persian king and the Roman king, the Prophet ﷺ said, Ila raheequl azim ar-Rum. Ila Kisra azim Faris. But for these ones, just said, Ila Hawdha bin Ali. He didn't say Malik Yamama or Azim Yamama. Salamun ala man ittaba al-huda. Peace be upon those who will follow the guidance. وَعَلَمْ أَنَّ دِينِ سَيَظْهَرُ عَلَى مُنْتَهَى الْخُفِّ وَالْحَافِرِ. You should know that my religion is going to come and it will be apparent to the end of where any foot can be set and any hoof of an animal can be set. That is why Islam today exists in Yellowknife, near the Arctic. And Islam exists today in Chile, near the Antarctic. And Islam exists in the Sahara, in Mali. And Islam exists all the way in New Zealand. And Islam exists in Japan. You should know that this religion will enter every place where someone can set foot and an animal can set his hoof. فَأَسْلِمْ تَسْلَمْ. So become Muslim, you'll be safe. وَأَجْعَلُ لَكَ مَا تَحْتَ يَدَيْكَ. And look now, like I said, diplomacy. He says to him, if you become Muslim, you'll be safe and good with Allah, and whatever kingdom you have, I will leave it to you. Now that is a good deal. So the Prophet ﷺ did not want their wealth. He did not want what they have. That's not the point. He was just doing what? Da'wah ila Allah. Become Muslim and whatever kingship you have is still under you. When he had this message, Hawdha bin Ali, he greeted Salit and he welcomed him. When the message was read to him, he took the message in and then he wrote back. He says, he writing to the Prophet ﷺ, "Ma ahsana ma tad'uhu ilayhi wa ajmalahu." What you call to is very beautiful and nice. Wa ana ash'aru qawmi, wa ana sha'iru qawmi afwan, wa khatibuhum, wal arabu tahabu makani. I am the most poetic of all my people, and I am the best of the speakers, and all the Arabs, they revere and respect me. فَجَعَلْ لِي بَعْضَ الْأَمْرِ أَتَّبَعْكَ. Make for me some of your prophethood, I'll follow you also. And then he gave Salit with some gifts, and he gave him some robes, okay? And Salit, he went back to Medina. When the message was read to the Prophet ﷺ, the Prophet ﷺ, he said, if he asked me one pebble, one stone in the ground, I'll not give it to him. Bada wa bada Mafia. He is going to be destroyed and everything he has will be destroyed. And he died, Hawdha, very soon in the next year when the Prophet ﷺ was returning from Makkah, Fatah Makkah, Conquest of Makkah. These are some of the, and Yamama, these people of Yamama, we know they're very problematic because from them will come who? Musaylim al-Kadhab. During the time of the Prophet ﷺ, from them will come Musaylim who says, I'm a prophet. And he'll say the same thing, Musaylim. He'll say, I'll become a Muslim if you promise me when you die, I'll become the prophet after you. These were people, as you see, the common factor between them is that they chose the dunya. They chose the kingship which they had over what? Over becoming Muslim. Even though the Prophet ﷺ never wanted the kingdom. He said, you can keep your kingdom, just become a Muslim. But they feared their followers. And this is what happens to most people today. So these are some of the messages which the Prophet ﷺ he sent, and which give a preview of how far Islam will go, and they give you a recap of how far Islam has come. From 2, 5, 10, 40 people being persecuted in Makkah, they have no food, others being killed, to people who are now sending messages to the world. Now during this time, back to Medina now, the Jews who are now only or mostly in Khaybar, Banu Nadir who have been destroyed, Banu Qurayza, they had all run to Khaybar, and Khaybar was strong with people, and as a place it was fortified. They could not take the fact that the Arabs now decided there's no more war with the Prophet ﷺ. So they were still continuing every deceitful plotting, every evil and malicious plan against the Muslims. And this is the time they decided to do magic on him, sihr, on the Prophet ﷺ. And they did do sihr, magic on the Prophet ﷺ. Now I don't want to talk about this now, I want to delay it to tomorrow. We'll come back to it tomorrow, but this is what it happened. And it happened, and we believe sihr is true, magic is true. It's just like any other sickness. If Allah wants it to afflict you, it will afflict you. Okay? But sihr is real, magic is real. We believe in that. And there's no good magic, for the sake of my younger brothers and sisters. There's no white magic and black magic, no. Magic is all bad. They try to make it good, just like they try to make everything bad to seem good. We'll come back to this, but this is the time they did the sihr on the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And around the same time now, because of the peace, remember, this Sulh al-Hudaybiyah, the peace between Muslims and the kuffar of Makkah, it brought about great things. That's why Allah called it Fatih. It's a victory. This is the time of the famous story which we know when Qutayla bint Abdul Uzza. Qutayla bint Abdul Uzza was the divorcee of Abu Bakr. She came to visit her daughter Asma bint Abu Bakr. Qutayla is one of those women who was married to Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, and he had divorced her before Islam. Before Islam they had gone their separate ways. But Qutayla is the mother of Asma and Abdullah ibn Abu Bakr. Okay, Abdullah, if you remember him, he was the one who used to bring the food when the Prophet ﷺ was hiding in the cave during the Hijrah. This is their mother. So during this time, she came to Medina to visit Asma, her daughter. When she came, it's Hadith in Bukhari and Muslim, Asma, she says, قَدِمَتْ أُمِّيَ وَهِيَ مُشْرِكَةٌ فِي عَهْدِ قُرَيْشٍ فِي صُلْحِ الْحُدَيْبِيَةِ. My mom came to visit me during the time of peace. وَهِيَ رَاغِبَةٌ أَيْ أَنْ تَصِلَهَا. And she wanted to become close to me again. But I said I cannot do that unless I go ask the Prophet ﷺ, because you're not a Muslim. And you're from those people who are fighting Muslims. So she went and asked the Prophet ﷺ, Ya Rasulullah, inna ummiya qadimat alayya wa hiya raghibah. My mom came to me and she wants to reconnect and be close to me. Afa asilu ummi. Should I reconnect and be good to my mother? The Prophet ﷺ says, Na'am sili ummak. Of course, you have to be good to your mother, even though she's not a Muslim. Even though she's not a Muslim. فأنزل الله سبحانه وتعالى, that is when Allah revealed the verse, لا ينهاكم الله عن الذين لم يقاتلوكم في الدين ولم يخرجوكم من دياركم أن تبروهم وَتُقْسِطُوا إِلَيْهِمْ إِنَّ اللَّهَ يُحِبُّ الْمُقْسِطِينَ. Allah says in Surah Al-Mumtahina, those great verses, Allah does not prevent you Muslims from those non-Muslims who don't fight you, and they have not chased you away, they have not chased you away from your homelands, that you do good to them and be justful when you deal with them, because Allah loves those who are just and fair. إنما ينهاكم الله عن الذين قاتلوكم في الدين وأخرجوكم من دياركم. Allah prevents you from becoming good friends with those non-Muslims who have been fighting you and they have chased you away from your lands. Which shows you the beauty of Islam. The relationship between mother and father, parents and children, children and parents, relatives, it traverses religion. Because it's blood and you cannot separate blood. There might be limits, but you have to be good to your relatives. This is the lesson. This is when it happened. And like we said before, guys, our seerah, the way we do it, we try to mention everything. So this famous hadith we've been hearing is very good to know when these events actually happened. So they give you context. The next major event which happened was the battle of the Qirat, or the Qarat, or Al-Khaba, also known as Al-Khaba. It's not really a huge battle, but basically I'll just summarize it. The Prophet ﷺ, he had 20 camels, which are called liqah. These are camels of milk. They're full of milk, which they used to bring them outside of Medina to those, like, it's a woody place. It's like a small forest full of trees. And there was a man there who was in charge of that with his wife. And this man was from the tribe of Rifah. While they were at that, Abdurrahman ibn Uyayna ibn Hisn, Abdurrahman ibn Uyayna ibn Hisn al-Faza'i, he was one of the main enemies of Islam. We have heard a few times his name. His father, Uyayna ibn Hisn, was going to become Muslim after, by the way. And this is his son, Abdurrahman ibn Uyayna ibn Hisn. He attacked that man and he killed him. Okay? And they took his wife as a captive and they took those camels. So the first person to get this news was the Sahaba called Salama ibn al-Aqwa. You have to memorize this name. Salama ibn al-Aqwa. You have to memorize this family name. Because the next event which we're going to mention, they're going to come a lot. They're going to feature a lot. Salama was going out before Fajr. And with him was the servant of the Prophet ﷺ called Rabah. So Salam was the Rabah, and Salam had borrowed Talha's horse, Talha ibn Ubaydullah. When they were walking, one of the Sahabas of Abdurrahman bin Auf came to them, and he had seen what happened. He said, "Do you know what happened? I just saw Abdurrahman ibn Uyayna ibn Hisn. Okay, he attacked the man who's taking care of the camels of the Prophet ﷺ. And he took the camels and he took the women." So when he heard that, Salama, he told to Rabah, "Take this horse and go give the news to the Prophet ﷺ." And then he shouted, "Ya Sabaha," which was the war cry, saying there's a war, 3 times, where everyone in Medina heard of that. And then he says, this is a hadith, famous hadith narrated by Salama himself. He says, I started chasing them on foot. Uyayna ibn Hisn with his group. And I started shooting arrows at them. And every time I was shooting, he used to say this line of poetry. Ana ibn al-Aqwa'i wal yawma yawm ar-Rudda'i. I am Ibn al-Aqwa', and today is a day of humiliation. He says, so I started shooting them arrows. And every time they would come to me, I would hide behind the trees. So the horse can't reach me. And so I'll shoot down the horse and then shoot down the person also. until I had short of them almost 20 of them. And I managed to return every single camel of the Prophet ﷺ. And I was still chasing them on my feet. So they started throwing away their weapons, whatever they were carrying. And they threw out at least around 20 or 30 lances and body armor, if I'm not wrong, or spears. And every time they threw something, I would put a mark of stones, so that when the Prophet ﷺ comes, they'll recognize that. Until they went far from me, but I kept chasing them. When I came to a hill and I saw them, they had taken refuge there. They were camping there. And I hid myself. But then Ar-Rahmah says, I feel that maybe someone is still chasing us. So he sent 4 of them to go look up the hill. He says, Salam, when they were coming up the hill, I shouted, Ata'arifuna, do you know who I am? They said, who are you? He says, Ana ibn al-Aqwa'i, I am the son of al-Aqwa'. وَالَّذِي كَرَّمَ وَجْهُ مُحَمَّدٍ صَلَّى اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ وسلم. By the one who has honored the face of Muhammad صلى الله عليه وسلم. لَا أَطْلُبُ رَجُلًا مِنْكُمْ إِلَّا أَدْرَكْتُهُ. I do not chase any one of you except that I'll get him. وَلَا يَطْلُبُنِي رَجُلٌ مِنْكُمْ فَيُدْرِكَنِي. And no one of you will chase me to get him. So they all returned. This is the time when the Prophet ﷺ, he got a small band of people together and they went out. And from the first ones who went out was Al-Miqdad ibn Amr, and Abbad ibn Bishr, and Sa'd ibn Zayd, and Usayd ibn Buhair, and Ukash ibn Mihsan radiallahu anhu. And they followed their footsteps until they reached me. And I said, oh, Ya Rasulullah, give me a group of 10 people and I will chase these people down. So the Prophet ﷺ, he let them go ahead. But the first man who mentioned was Miqdad ibn Amr. He says, so the first one who reached me, was Al-Akhram, radiallahu anhu, if I'm not wrong. He chased down and reached Abdurrahman ibn Ania ibn Hisn. And they started fighting, and he was killed. He was killed, Al-Akhram radiallahu anhu. And then Abu Qatada went after him, and he killed Abdurrahman ibn Ania. And he took his robe and he covered him. Because the laws or the rules regarding fighting back then, if you kill someone, whatever they have, the body armor, wealth, swords, it belongs to you. So when the Muslims reached there, they were very sad. They said, oh, Abu Qatada was killed because they saw his robe. And the Prophet ﷺ said, La, laysa bi Abi Qatada. There is not Abu Qatada. There is someone who Abu Qatada has killed. Ukash ibn Mihsan, he followed one of them and he killed him also. Until we reached a place when the Prophet ﷺ, he camped when they had water. And Salam is saying, Ya Rasulullah, give me a small army so I can chase them. And the Prophet ﷺ smiled. He said, Ya ibn al-Aqwa', malakta fa asji'. إنهم الآن ليقرؤون في أرض غطفان. Hey Sahib, the Prophet ﷺ said, you have won, so be gentle. It's enough. They are now in the tribe of Ghatafan. They have refuge there. Ghatafan is one of the main tribes of the Arabs which will continue to fight against Islam. Okay? In this battle, the Prophet ﷺ, he prayed Salatul Khawf, which you mentioned before. And we discussed that in detail for the crowd. And the Prophet ﷺ returned back to Medina with Salam ibn al-Aqwa' on the same horse, honoring him, Salam ibn al-Aqwa'. Salam, says, before we reached Medina, like 2 or 3 miles before it, there used to be a man of the Ansar who used to love foot racing. And he said, who's going to race me? And someone says, I would never love ever to be defeated or someone to challenge me. So I arrest him and I won. This is Salam al-Aqwa radiallahu anhu. As for that woman though, who was taken as a captive, what happened to her? When they were returning, Salam was returning back every camel from those people when they were running away. This woman managed to get free. And every time she went to a camel to try to ride it, the camel would refuse. The camel would refuse. Every time she tried to climb a camel, it would refuse. Except when she got to the camel called Al-Adba, which belongs to the Prophet ﷺ. It's known. Al-Adba belongs to the Prophet ﷺ. She managed to ride on that camel and come back all the way to Medina. And when she did this, she said, I take a vow with Allah. Another, the camel which takes me back, I'm going to slaughter it for the sake of Allah. Because the camel saved her. It's a good camel. When she entered Medina, people said, Al-Adba, what happened to the Prophet ﷺ? And she informed the people of a vow. When the Prophet ﷺ came back and was told, he said, Subhanallah, بِئْسَ مَا جَزَتْهَا. What an evil reward she has done. بِئْسَ مَا جَزَيْتِيهَا في رواية. لا وفاء لنذر في معصية الله ولا فيما لا يملك من آدم. This is when this hadith came down. There is no wafa, there is no another vow in what is sinful to Allah. And there is no vow, another, in what you don't own. The camel is not yours, how are you going to slaughter it? You cannot slaughter what is not yours. So none of us today can come and say, I make a vow with Allah, I'm going to steal so-and-so's wealth. There's no another in haram, ma'asiyatullah. There's not a vow we have to fulfill. Or I make a vow, I'm going to take Muhammad's car and crush it. It's not yours. In fact, you'll have to pay now. Tayyib. So this is what happened. Now after this, by the way, this was 3 days before the Prophet ﷺ, he set out to Khaybar. Where that was the last center of working against the Muslims. They had not stopped doing that. And remember, there were the people who convinced Banu Qurayza, who had a treaty with the Prophet ﷺ, they had peace treaty. They convinced them to break the treaty to attack the Muslims from behind during the Battle of Ahzab. The remaining of them had run to Khaybar. And there were the people who had done sihr to the Prophet ﷺ. And. So 3 days after that, the Prophet ﷺ, now he sets out to Khaybar, which we'll discuss tomorrow, inshallah. Okay? If you have any questions, you can ask 2-3 questions. Okay, maybe just, you know what, we'll make use of the time since we have 15 minutes. We'll talk about sihr. I know you love this topic, most of you. So we'll talk about sihr. They did the sihr on the Prophet ﷺ. Number one, guys, these are ahadith in Sahih Muslim, Sahih al-Bukhari. They are undoubtable, if that's a word. Okay? You cannot doubt it. It happened. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah Al-Baqarah, sihr is true. It happens. Okay? But it only happens if Allah wants it to happen. What is sihr, magic or sorcery? Sihr is an agreement between the human being who does sorcery or witchcraft with jinns, shayateen. The shayateen are going to help him or her as long as he or her obeys them, which is to do kufr and every kind of sin. This is how sihr happens, by the witness, by the accounts of people who used to do sihr. It's true. They do some of the craziest thing you can ever think of, that humans can reach that level. There's one magician back from where I come from. He wanted to become a sorcerer, sahir. So they told him, okay, the first thing you have to do is you take a pen or whatever it is and you write parts of the Quran on your feet. And then you walk with that to the washroom. And you read whatever they gave them to read, to call the jinns and shayateen. Every kind of kufr you can think of, that's what they do. He did that. Next he was told you have to step on the mushaf. He did that. The more kufr you do, the greater the jinns or shayateen you get to help you. That's how it goes. And then he himself is telling the story, by the way. He said the last thing they told me, they said, okay, you go to this and this graveyard. You go to a grave, take out a fresh dead body. Make sure it's someone who has not been buried for more than 3 days. Take out the body and cut off the head and bring it to us. I'm sorry, my young brothers and sisters over here, this is more of a horror movie. It is. They did that. Imagine. And if you do that, by the way, look, they get rich. When I say they get rich, they get powerful. The jinns, they can do that for you. The human being who likes that, he gets that. They brought the head. When they brought the head, they were told, okay, pour it in the boiling water, make a soup and drink. Pretty messed up, huh? That's pretty nasty. But that's sihr for you. He says that is when I said, okay, I don't want anymore. Every kind of kufr action, that's what they do. I saw one in a video who was caught, or he repented himself. He said, we'll take the blood, we take blood, the menstrual blood of women, and we write Quran with that. To that point. Every kind of kufr, the more kufr you do, the more the shayateen they help you. And that is why there's no good sihr. That's what I told you. Whatever words they tell you to say on those books of witchcraft is all kufr in Allah and believing in them. So the more kufr someone has, the more they're strong. So, but anyway, they did sihr on the Prophet ﷺ. And mostly for them to do sihr on you, they have to get some of your remnants. So the Jews, they went to someone called Labid ibn A'sam. Labid ibn A'sam is from the Arabs of the Ansar. But you know, we mentioned this before, the Arabs of the Ansar, before Islam came, they were divided in two groups. The Aus and the Khazraj. And each of them had allies of the Jews, and they used to intermarry also. Labid ibn A'sam was known for his sick witchcraft. So now, the Jews and Khatafan and Quraysh, they were defeated in Ahzab. They said, this is the way we have to hit him now. We have to do sihr on him. So they went to Labid bin A'sam, they promised him wealth. They say, we want you to do magic on him. The Prophet ﷺ. And the Prophet ﷺ, they did magic on him using his comb. The comb which you comb your hair with. The comb, usually when you comb your hair, what happens? Hair comes out, right? They took that hair and the comb. And that is how they did the magic. And he put it in the skin of a dead palm tree. And he did whatever sihr, he did magic, and he blew into it. And then he took that and he put it under a well, under a stone in a well of water. And this affected the Prophet ﷺ for almost 6 months. It never affected him in his mind or in his Islam, his deen. But it held him from his wife. And that is the strongest kind of sihr. Allah says in the Quran, يُفَرِّقُونَ بِهِ بَيْنَ الْمَرْءِ وَزَوْجِهِ. They separate his wife. Allah also says, وَمَا هُمْ بِضَارِّينَ بِهِ مِنْ أَحَدٍ إِلَّا بِإِذْنِ اللَّهِ. But they cannot affect anyone except with the permission of Allah. But Allah wanted to test His Prophet. So this affected the Prophet ﷺ on and off. And he used to make dua continuously until wahy came down. One day when the Prophet ﷺ was sleeping, he saw in his dream, he says, I saw two men. When he woke up now, he's telling Aisha, he says, Ya Aisha, you know the thing I was asking Allah about. Today Allah has given me the answer. Two men came to me, Jibreel and Mikael. One sat close to me, close to my head, one sat close to my feet. And he asked another, the one asked another, what does the man have? The other one said, he has sorcery done with him, magic. He said, who did it to him? He said, Labid ibn al-A'sam. How did he do it to him? Using his comb and the remaining hairs of the comb. Where is it? It is under the well. It is under the, what is the well called? في بئر ذروان. بئر ذروان. And that is where the موعظتين were revealed. قل أعوذ برب الفلق and قل أعوذ برب الناس. That is when they were revealed. And that is when the Prophet ﷺ is saying, no one can protect himself with something better than قل أعوذ برب الفلق and قل أعوذ برب الناس. And including that, قل الله أحد. You read that to yourself every morning after Fajr, before sunrise, 3 times. You read that for yourself every evening after Asr, before sunset, 3 times. You read that on yourself 3 times before you sleep. Nothing can harm you. You read Ayatul Kursi, nothing can harm you. Even if they bring the greatest of all sorcerers from whatever it is. Nobody can harm you. So the Prophet ﷺ, he was cured after that. But this happened during this time. This happened during this time. It's very important for a Muslim ikhwan or akhawat to always be doing his or her adhkar. You have to be doing your morning adhkar, your evening adhkar, your adhkar before you sleep. It's very important. For the parents, you have to teach your children. These are the least you can do. Ayatul Kursi. Okay? Before sunset, before sunrise. This is not the one you read after Salah. That's after Salah. This is Adhkar al-Sabah, for protection in the morning. And then you read it after Asr, before sunset. Ayatul Kursi, Qul Allahu Ahad 3 times, Qul A'udhu Rabbil Falaq 3 times, Qul A'udhu Rabbin Nas 3 times. The Prophet ﷺ says, whoever reads Ayatul Kursi in the morning, nothing can harm him until the evening. And whoever reads it in the evening, nothing can harm him until the morning. And before you sleep, you read Ayatul Kursi. The one who reads Ayatul Kursi before he sleeps, the Prophet ﷺ says, Allah brings an angel who stays with him until he wakes up. Nothing can harm him. And before sleeping, this is just before sleeping, the Prophet ﷺ will take his hands and spit in them just lightly while blowing in them. And read Qul Wallahu Ahad, Qul A'udhu Rabbil Falaq, Qul A'udhu Rabbin Nas, and then wipe over his body, starting with his face and his head. And then do it 2nd time. Qul Wallahu Ahad, Qul A'udhu Rabbil Falaq, Qul A'udhu Rabbin Nas, and wipe over his body. And then 3rd time. Aisha, she says, when he became sick, the Prophet ﷺ, in his later days, I used to do it for him, to show you how important it is. That is the greatest protection of a Muslim. The greatest protection is the strength of your iman. That you rely on Allah, you depend on Him. And you know that the one who depends on Allah, nothing can harm him. Nothing can harm him. So tomorrow, inshallah, we'll start with the battle of Khaybar. And then from Khaybar, we'll see how those of you who are here today for the Friday khutbah, this is the time right after the battle, and we mentioned it today, when the people from Habasha. In Habasha, the Muslims were migrated to Habasha, Ja'far, and then this is when they came back. Exactly when they came back. And then we'll see after that, the Battle of Mu'tah now, with the Romans. Remember now, problems have started with the Romans. And then the Muslims are going to go do their first Umrah in Islam. The first Umrah in Islam. And then will come the conquest of Makkah. Bidnillah, Fath Makkah. This is what is going to happen, inshallah, if you are still alive for the next 2 days. Now, Jazakumullah khairan, may Allah reward you for participating. Do not get tired. I want to say this before we leave. It is very sad that we as Muslims are still very, very lacking in terms of knowledge of our seerah, our history. This is something very important. Okay, I've been gone from Canada for a while, just came back. And our issues continue to be greater, especially the young people. But you know, the problem we have with young people becoming rebellious or leaving their deen completely is because of 2 reasons. Number one, there's no relation with the religion, and that's the greatest thing all of us have here. We all come from different places, but the only thing which joins us is Islam. Alhamdulillah. Let's not forget that. But when someone grows in a household, in a community where he's not connected to Islam, we as human beings, our nature is created, we want to belong somewhere. We want to fit somewhere. If you don't have that, the only other thing which can hold you is if you have an identity. They call it hawiyya in Arabic. Okay? An identity. We don't have an identity because we're just a small group immersed in so many other people. So you get lost. An identity can only come if you have people to relate to. You say, what, you know what? I am Muslim, I know my history. Everybody is proud of their history. Everybody is proud of their history. That's why I belong. And that's the difference between us. I don't say old people because I'm not old. Despite some of us thinking I'm not old. But us old people who grew up and were taught in the madrasas, which are half functioning back home, whatever back home is, by the way. Whether from the Arab world, African world, Eastern European world, wherever you're coming from, North African world, everyone was taught the seerah. Everyone. And everyone knows the least part of the seerah. You know, I know Bada, I know Uhud, I know Fath Makkah, everybody knows that. You have an identity, you have something you can relate to. I know I have people. I am not just someone who's in the middle of nothing. Our young people, they don't have that. They don't have the strength of Iman, and they don't have identity. That is why he has to belong to a group. That's why he has to belong to a gang. That is why he has to relate to the movie, to the music he listens to. That is why you're losing him. That is why you're losing him. Why? Because there's no identity. There's no identity. If you have no identity, where do you belong? You don't belong anywhere. If you don't belong anywhere, that means I can go anywhere, wherever I fit in. And that is what is happening. Wherever I can fit in, that's how young people. I grew up half in Africa and then half here. I went to high school here. I know how it works. I'm not a stranger. That is the problem we have. Very sad. And when we started this seerah, now it's 3 years ago here, we mentioned how the tabi'un, they used to be told what? You have to learn the seerah. They used to be beaten to learn the seerah. Because they are told, فِيهِ مَجْدَ آبَائِكُمْ. That is where the victory and honor of your forefathers is. This is something very important to the fathers and the mothers. Something very important to those in charge of Islamic centers. We don't have to do it the way we are doing it. taking 3-4 years. We can summarize it. But if we don't give an identity to the young Muslims, the problems we have are going to grow bigger. I am telling you that for a fact. There has to be an identity. That is why you who are coming here, may Allah reward you with good. We are learning of who we are. This is our history. This is our real history. And like I said, it's very sad. Alhamdulillah, even those who know the Seerah, most of us, we don't know what happened after the Prophet. This great ummah we're proud of. What happened after that? Most of us, we don't know. Because we don't even have books of that in English. Can you imagine? We don't. So how do we expect to actually progress in that way? And that is why the enemies of Islam, they know they can't attack the Quran anymore. They attack us through our history. Oh, you know, you Muslims, you did this and that. That is how everybody attacks everybody. And if they can tell you something which you and me as Muslims we never heard of before, or this is in this book, you never had access to before, you are lost. In fact, you're defeated. You're defeated. It's extremely important. Alhamdulillah, you go to every masjid, or most masjids, there is at least one halaq al-fiqh. There's one halaqah maybe of, I don't know, aqidah maybe. Why don't we learn our tariq? Because it's extremely important. At least we have to know it, so when someone comes and claims something against us, we say, no, that's not how it happened. It happened like this. Even the other groups in Islam today, they are attacking the Ahl Sunnah in general because of the tariq. That's where the madhab of the Shia is based on. To give one example, they don't attack the Quran. They say, no, this is what the Sahaba did. After the Prophet died, they did this. That shows the bad people, right or wrong. How can you prove it wrong when you yourself, you never even heard of that story? You never read about it. It's extremely important. It's extremely important for anyone who hears me. It's a conversation I had with a few friends last week, 2 weeks ago. It is sad that we don't even have resources of this in English. We don't. But inshallah, this is a good start. We're here for the 3rd year now. And hopefully, inshallah, we'll finish very soon, like you see. After Fatih Makkah, there isn't much. Battle of Tabuk, Hunayn, the other messages being sent out, and all the people entering into Islam, bidinillahi afwaja. And then is the death of the Prophet ﷺ, which the Prophet ﷺ said, when any of you is undergoing hard times, difficulties, then let him remember my death. Because nothing is more difficult than that to a true Muslim. We'll continue tomorrow, inshallah. Subhanallah wa bihamdihi, la ilaha illa anta, astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. 1 o'clock tomorrow, inshallah. It's going to be in the hall, in the basement hall tomorrow, inshallah. And all of this is in the YouTube channel now. All of the previous lectures, they are on the YouTube channel.